Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Switch on your videos first. Sanjana, Emlyn, Anila, Abhinav, Kevin, Umar, Nestle, Lena, Meryl. Okay. So we have completed selective attention. Do you have any doubt in that portion? Selective attention? No. Okay. So we'll be starting with sustained attention. These are the two main types of attention that we have to study about. I mean, descriptively study about. Okay. This is second one, sustained attention. Please note down sustained attention. Okay. In the previous class, I think I described about sustained attention a bit. What do you mean by sustained attention? In common terms, tell in your own words. What did you understand about sustained attention? Yes. What is the difference between selective attention and sustained attention then?
Sustained attention is usually for longer than selective attention.
Okay. Actually, selective attention and sustained attention, they can happen together also. Like in an examination, what you do is you attend to the instruction of the teacher, or maybe you attend to the questions itself in the question paper for a very long time. I mean, for the duration of that particular examination, isn't it? So that is already selective attention because you're ignoring all other stimulus around you and you're focusing on this. You're attending to this and you're doing it for a particular amount of time also. So sustained attention and selective attention, both of them can occur together. Selective attention is if there are suppose 10 stimulus around you, you pick only one or two, or the number of stimulus that you want to attend to based on your purpose, based on your needs, based on the individual characteristics. We saw different characteristics yesterday, external and internal. Based on that, you'll be selecting the stimulus to attend to. Similarly, for sustained attention, what happens is the process of attention lasts for a particular amount of time. You sustain your attention. You continue attending to that stimulus for a particular amount of time. That is what's meant by sustained attention. So we'll see that. Page number 95. After multimode theory, we have sustained attention. Okay. While selective attention is mainly concerned with the selection of stimuli, sustained attention is concerned with concentration. Underline that. In the previous one, selection of stimuli happens. Here, it's more or less related to concentration. In the introduction part of attention, we saw the different features of attention, isn't it? Concentration, search. Then what was the other term? Starting with A.
Alert.
Alertness, alert, being alert. Okay. So here, the more focus or the theme is of concentration in sustained attention. Then It refers to ability to maintain attention on an object or event for longer durations. Underline that also. Refers to our ability to maintain attention or on an object or event for longer durations. So the time factor is important, or time factor gets more focus here. Okay. So longer durations, that's the main highlight of sustained attention. And one more thing that you have to note in that definition is you can have the sustained attention focused on an object or an event. Can be anything. It can be a person, it can be a non-living object, or it can be an event, a situation in which you're in. Okay. Then, for example, when you're attending a seminar or a conference, or maybe an important meeting, you have to sustain your attention there, isn't it? Because you might miss some important point if you shift your attention from away from this main seminar or the concept that the speaker is talking about. So you have to sustain. That means you have to sustain your attention. Okay. Then it is also known as vigilance. The sustained attention, it is also called vigilance. Sometimes people have to concentrate on a particular task for many hours. Air traffic controllers and radar readers provide us with good examples of this phenomenon. That is, excuse me, that is an area from which a question can be asked. So please mark it in key. Practical application of sustained attention. Air traffic controllers and radar readers. Then they have to constantly watch and monitor signals on screens. The occurrence of signals in such situations is usually unpredictable, and errors in detecting signals may be fatal. Hence, a great deal of vigilance is required in those situations. So while selecting these individuals, their attention and all might be tested. Okay, that's why we are learning attention and all. Otherwise, we don't have any particular use for learning about attention, isn't it? Like when employee selection takes place in various organizations, and especially in fields like these, which require the sustained attention too much, then obviously they'll be tested on that, and then only they'll be selected for the post. Okay, so before admitting them or employing them into the institution or maybe that organization, the personality test might be done, this attention test might be done, then various other skills required for the particular job that also might be tested, along with the subject expertise. That is, whichever field they are working in, they would be tested in that subject also. Okay, that's where the application of psychology again comes in. Remember when we learned about organizational psychology or industrial psychology? There what happens is for the welfare of the employees, we apply psychology, obviously, and also for the employee selection, psychological factors, psychological tests are applied. Okay. All right. So that's an introduction about sustained attention. You have to note its other name is vigilance. The theme that's happening is about concentration. Then you have to know that the attention is focused maybe on an object or an event. Then the highlight of the definition is it happens for what?
Longer durations.
Longer durations. Clear. Okay. Now, yesterday we saw a few factors that are affecting selective attention. Remember? Yes. What were the main categories or classification that?
External factors and internal factors.
Okay. So external factors are related to dash. What was it?
Stimuli.
Stimuli or the stimulus. And internal factors? Individual. Yes. Internal factors are related. Yes, Samal? Was that your answer? Individual, yes. Internal factors are related to the individual. And again, we divided internal factors into two. Which are they? Internal factors that's related to the individual, that was divided into two again.
Motivational and
Motivational and
cognitive.
cognitive factors.
Motivational and cognitive factors. Motivational is related to the biological or social needs, and the cognitive factors, they are related to the interest, attitude, preparatory set of the individual. Okay, fine. So similarly, for sustained attention also, we have a few number of factors that are affecting the whole process of sustained attention. Okay, there are 4 given here, and unlike the previous section, in the previous section, motivational factors, interest, attitude, biological needs, social needs, all were relatively familiar terms, isn't it? Like when you hear the term, you could write on your own or describe on your own, but these factors are quite tricky with different names. So we'll see them one by one. Several factors can facilitate or inhibit an individual's performance on tasks of sustained attention. Okay, not on sustained attention as a whole, but even on the tasks that are involving sustained attention. There are various other factors. So first one mentioned here is sensory modality. Right, the first one, sensory modality. Sensory modality. Yes. When we talked about sensation in the initial part of the chapter, we talked about sense modalities. Remember? Yes. How many sense modalities do we have? Or how many
5.
did we learn about? 5, isn't it? Each related to each sense organ. Okay. So that's the point here. And the researchers and studies have shown that performance is found to be superior when the stimuli called signals are auditory than when they are visual. Okay, so that means in relation to sustained attention, performance would be superior if the stimulus is auditory in nature. Okay, that's mentioned here. Superior when the stimuli are auditory than when they are visual. So when you compare the visual sensory modality and the auditory sensory modality, then auditory is a bit higher. It has superiority over the visual ones. Okay. So in relation to sustained attention, when you consider any task that involves sustained attention, it was found that performance is superior when the stimulus is in what nature? Auditory in nature.
Auditory.
Okay. So auditory is superior to visual ones. This is the point here, sensory modality. So sensory modality means it's related to all the senses that we have. That is vision, audition, then the smell, taste, feel, and so on. And there are different researches happening in different fields in psychology, isn't it? So according to a set of research, it was found that performance is superior when the stimulus is auditory in nature. That's the first point. So that is one factor. Sensory modality is one factor that affects sustained attention. Okay. Now second one, clarity of stimuli. Clarity of stimuli. Yes. What do you mean by clarity? What do you mean by clarity?
It's clear without any interruptions.
Then Something that is unambiguous. Unambiguous means, what do you mean by ambiguous? Ambiguous means? Forget about unambiguous. Tell me what ambiguous is. You haven't heard of this term, ambiguous? Nobody.
Answer means excellent.
Ambiguous means excellent, no? Nobody else? Try at least. Guesswork. What do you mean by ambiguous?
I think it means something that's not clear, not clear cut.
Yeah, that's it. Something that is not clear, that is not evident. That is called ambiguous. So unambiguous means something that is somewhat clear, isn't it? Just the opposite. Yeah. So clarity, bringing clarity into something means making it less ambiguous, making it more clear. Okay. So clarity of stimuli, that is one point. What are we talking about here? Sustained attention and the factors affecting sustained attention. And we already know that there will be some kind of stimulus that requires this sustained attention from the person who is attending, isn't it? Suppose if I am the person who is involving in the sustained attention, I have to attend to some of the other stimulus. Yes. So we are talking about the clarity of that stimulus. That's the point. Okay, clarity of stimuli means the clearness or the less amount of ambiguity in the stimulus that we are attending to. That's it. So clarity of stimuli is another factor. Intense and long-lasting stimuli facilitate sustained attention and result in better performance. Okay, even in selective attention, we talked about this intensity, brightness and all, isn't it? Just like that here, clarity of stimulus also matters to sustain your attention towards that. Now, just before I talked about the seminar or conference, isn't it? If the speaker is talking in a very feeble voice, and you can't understand what the person is trying to convey, like the person is talking like this, and did you understand anything? Obviously not. Will you be able to sustain your attention? No. You would easily get bored. That is one thing. And you won't, again, because of the less clarity of the stimulus, you won't be able to sustain your attention. You would be looking at the rest of the audience, or you'll be playing with the phone, or you'll be texting your friend, or maybe you'll be counting some random things, maybe the chairs, or maybe the blocks on the wall or something. Okay, because you would be, or your attention would be easily cut. The sustained attention would be interrupted because of the feeble voice. So feeble voice is less intense. Okay, and it's not clear also. Clarity of stimuli is very low there. So sustained attention is affected, obviously. Okay. So intense and long-lasting stimuli facilitate sustained attention and result in better performance. So that means less intense and the stimuli that is not long lasting, which means it happens only for a very short period of time, they are less likely to grab your attention and also to maintain the sustained attention. That is the second point, clarity of stimuli. So we have seen sensory modality and also clarity of stimuli. Now the third one, temporal uncertainty. That's the third one, right? Temporal uncertainty. Temporal uncertainty. Temporal uncertainty. Kevin, just read what temporal uncertainty is. Page number
Ma'am, I
96.
don't have the textbook.
You don't have the textbook. Emmeline.
Temporal uncertainty is a thought factor. When stimuli appears at regular interval of time, they are attacked before that when they appear at irregular intervals.
Yes, it's about the interval of time, the presentation of stimulus in different intervals of time. Okay, that is related to temporal uncertainty. So that means uncertainty is a factor. Uncertain means you're not certain about the presentation of the stimulus. So again, look at the definition. When stimuli appear at regular intervals of time, they are attended better than when they appear at irregular intervals. Suppose imagine we are doing an activity. Maybe for maybe for sustained attention itself. Okay, I'm trying to measure your duration. Up till or until what time can you sustain your attention towards a particular stimulus? I'm trying to measure that. So I take the stopwatch, I start the stopwatch, and you are supposed to look at a whiteboard, a virtual board, a whiteboard, and one black dot would be appearing after every 5 seconds. So you'll have to keep counting those the number of times that this dot appears. Which color did I say again? White. Red.
Black.
Hmm?
Black.
Black. Okay. So you have to see how many times this black dot appears on that white screen. Okay. And this is the task. So I give this instruction to you. Every 5 seconds, this black dot would be appearing. Okay. And maybe we do this as an activity not related to academics, but some as a part of some cultural or curricular activity. And then I say that the one who maintains sustained attention, who manages to sustain their attention for the highest period of time, or the highest duration, would be gifted, or that person would be a winner or something like that. Okay, that would never work with you guys, but maybe in lower classes. Okay, then yeah, that's one situation. So every 5 seconds this black dot would appear and you have to keep counting. And so again, if it was the kids, they would sit and count for hours, isn't it? They're most likely to sit and count for us. But I'm not telling them that this happens for 5 seconds, and this doesn't happen for 5 seconds. It happens at irregular intervals. Suppose if the black dot appears after 2 seconds, the next time it happens after 7 seconds. The next time maybe after 10 seconds. Next time maybe after 2 seconds again, maybe after 1 second, maybe after 3, in a random fashion. Okay, this black dot is appearing on the whiteboard in a random fashion. Obviously, they'll get bored, isn't it? They don't know when to wait for. Maybe after 5 or 6 minutes, the black dot appears. They won't be waiting. So they'll have this mindset that no, this won't be occurring now. I'll just attend to something else. So obviously, they won't be able to sustain their attention. That is the thing mentioned here, temporal uncertainty, which means when stimuli appear at regular intervals of time, they are attended better than when they appear at irregular intervals. That's the point. Okay. When the stimulus appears at regular intervals, then they are attended to, and the sustained attention happens more in this case than when they are presented at irregular levels or irregular intervals of time. Clear? That is temporal uncertainty. Temporal is related to the interval of time. Uncertainty means it is uncertain. The presentation of stimulus is uncertain in nature. That's it. Temporal uncertainty. Then next one is spatial uncertainty. A point related to the previous one. Next one is spatial uncertainty. Spatial uncertainty. Spatial uncertainty. Okay, in the name itself, it's there. What would it be? Spatial uncertainty. Temporal uncertainty, again, the name was tricky, as I told you, but spatial and uncertainty, quite familiar terms. Relate that and tell me, what would that mean? Spatial uncertainty. Yes?
Spatial means it has to do with the surroundings, and uncertainty. So it probably means that it has to do with the location of the stimuli.
Okay, so spatial uncertainty would mean that something is not, if the space of the stimulus, we are talking about stimulus obviously, so if the place or the location or the position of the stimulus is not certain, then that is enhancing sustained attention or reducing.
Reducing.
If it's uncertain, then it's reducing. If it's certain, then it's enhancing. That's the point. Okay, so we'll see the description. Stimuli that appear at a fixed place are readily attended, whereas those that appear at random locations are difficult to attend. So fixed place and random place, that's the difference. If it is at a fixed place, then obviously that is attended to more or better. And sustained attention happens more in that case if it appears in a fixed place. And again, if it is a random place, then as compared to the fixed place case, the sustained attention happens in a lesser amount. Okay, if we take the previous example, the appearance of that black dot. What happens is, suppose if the board is too big, and they are given instruction that the black dot will appear only on the four corners of the board. Obviously, they can sustain attention as compared to the random random appearance of this black dot on the whiteboard, isn't it? That's the simple case. So spatial uncertainty means if the stimulus is appearing at a fixed place, then that means the sustained attention would be more, it would be enhanced. If it is appearing at a random place or random position, then, or random location, you can say, then that means the sustained attention would be relatively lesser or reduced than the previous case. Understood? So these are the 4 points that, or the 4 factors that are affecting sustained attention. First one is sensory modality. Second one, clarity of stimuli. Third one, temporal uncertainty. And fourth one, spatial uncertainty. Okay. These are the main factors affecting sustained attention. Any doubt in any of the 4? Less points as compared to selective attention, but as I told in the beginning, it's the names are a bit tricky. You just have to read and understand, that's it. Okay. All right. Any doubt? No. So please take page number 96 then. We'll read that case. Not case, it's like an application. Box 5.4, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Have you heard this term before? ADHD? Yes?
Yes, some of the students cannot attend the classes and some of the students cannot study. I saw some of the students cannot study in the class.
Why?
Then they're disturbed in the classes.
They are disturbed in the classes. Why? Why does this happen? Any comments on ADHD? You might have seen that in films or heard about it from someone or read about it.
I have seen from our school. some of the students are like that.
Huh. That can be diagnosed as ADHD, but maybe some behavioral problems might be there. Okay. Then, what have you all heard of ADHD?
ADHD students will give a
Don't
special
call them ADHD students.
ADHD have a disorder has students has
Ah.
a special school for them to study, not like other people
Not
study.
everybody, but still, yes, there are special schools for certain students who are not manageable in the usual normal situations. Okay, then.
They cannot prolong their attention for a very long period of time.
Okay, that is one feature.
They do not follow the instruction from teachers and parents.
It's not that they don't want, it's that they can't because of some of the underlying problems. Okay, the reason why I told you not to call them ADHD students is it's like we are stigmatizing them. Even even if it's related to any disorder in psychology, not only psychology, the other diseases also, we usually say it's not right. Suppose if there is a person with suffering from schizophrenia. Have you heard of schizophrenia? It's a psychological disorder. So we shouldn't call them schizophrenic. Like we have to, as I told just now, we have to say that is a person suffering from schizophrenia. That's it. If you are suffering from cough or cold, do somebody call you cough or cold? No, isn't it? Or if you're suffering from fever, would somebody call you fever? No. So similarly, you shouldn't call them, you shouldn't address them with the disorder. You can say that this client or this person or this individual suffers from this disorder. That's it. Okay. Any other points on ADHD? So the basic features in ADHD, remember that attention deficit, attention will be less. That is, there's especially the sustained attention would be less. Then hyperactivity disorder. So that means activity would be hyper in nature, which means very much increased psychomotor activities will be there. They'll be very much restless. They can't sit in a seat in the class. I'm talking about the students in classroom settings. Okay, this happens in adults also, but most of the time this starts in childhood. Okay, so behavioral training should be given. The treatment should be given from childhood itself. Then only they'll be able to manage things in adulthood also. Fine. Okay.
Drug should be given to them, Ridalium.
That's there in the textbook. I saw. Drugs. Drugs are not always prescribed. It's not necessary that all the psychological disorders should be treated with drugs itself. We can try for the therapeutic ones. If it doesn't work, or if it requires the help or acquaintance from the medicine, obviously both can be taken.
This should be consulted to the physiatrist and psychiatrist.
Physiatrist is wrong. Psychiatrist, yes, fine. And psychologist also. The psychotherapist and psychiatrist, both of them can work together to help this client, the ADHD. So let's see that case. Mary, can you start reading?
Yes, ma'am. This is a very common behavioral disorder found among children of the primary school age. It is characterized by impulsivity, excessive
underline impulsivity,
and inability to attend. This disorder is more prevalent among boys than among girls. If not managed properly, the attention difficulties may persist into adolescence
or adult years. That's what I told before. If you don't treat them in the childhood itself, or if you don't train them, that's a better way to say. If you don't train them in childhood itself, it would be affecting the adolescent as well as the adulthood years. Next year, when you learn about psychological disorders, it's a whole chapter. We have a whole chapter on that. In that you'll understand how much important it is to train the children from, or maybe treat the children with certain disorders from childhood itself. Okay. All right. And impulsivity, what do you mean by impulsivity? Being impulsive. Have you seen the movie Confessions of a Shopaholic? No?
No, ma'am.
Okay. What do you mean by impulsivity? Being impulsive. You know it, but you can't describe it. Is that your problem now?
Means nervous
Nah,
behavior.
I didn't hear you.
Means nervous behavior.
What of behavior? Usually impulsivity means acting without a second thought. If you feel like eating ice cream now, you're stopping the class and running off to the store to buy the ice cream. That's impulsivity. You can't wait for anything. You don't have a second thought. You act on your urges. You act on your basic needs. Obviously, we all are living for satisfying our basic needs, but impulsivity means, again, not having a second thought about it. Okay. Yes, continue.
Difficulty in sustaining attention is the central feature of this disorder, which gets reflected in several other domains of the child. For example, such children are highly distractible. They do not follow instructions, have difficulty in getting along with parents, and are negatively viewed by their peers. They do poorly in school and show difficulties in reading or learning basic subject new schools, in spite of that fact that there is no defect in
their intelligence. Yes, that's the thing. It's not that because they are poor in their intelligence. It's not because of it's not because of their low IQ. They have intelligence, but they are not able to cope up with the situation. They are not able to follow instructions. They are not able to sustain their attention for a very long time in anything. Like if the teacher gives instruction, you have to do this first, then you have to do that first, then you have to follow these steps and complete the task. They won't be able to do that. Even if they are given a task to practically perform, they won't be able to continue their attention for a very long time. They can't sit in their seats even for a very long time. They get easily distracted. And in turn, what will they do? They'll distract the class also. Okay. Then, studies generally do not provide evidence for a biological basis of this disorder, whereas some relationship of disorder with dietary factors, particularly food coloring, has been documented. On the other hand, social psychological factors, example, home environment, family pathology. Family pathology means if somebody in the family, maybe the close relationship or distant relationships, have certain disorders or diseases that might also influence this problem, have been found to account for ADHD more reliably than other factors. Currently, ADHD is considered to have multiple causes and effects. Okay, then disagreement remains over the most effective method of treatment of ADHD. That's why I told you drugs can be given and the psychotherapy can be given and hand in hand with each other. Both of them goes hand in hand with. So a drug called Ritalin is widely used, which decreases children's overactivity and distractibility. At the same time, increases their attention ability to concentrate. However, it does not cure the problem and often also results in such negative side effects as a suppression in normal growth of height and weight. It's another side effect of this particular drug. The normal height and weight, the normal growth is affected there. Then, on the other hand, behavioral management programs featuring positive reinforcement and structuring learning materials and tasks in such a way that minimizes errors and maximizes immediate feedback and success have been found quite useful. That is behavioral management techniques. And that's the training that I told about. Successful modification of ADHD is claimed with cognitive behavioral training program, CBT. That's a CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, in which rewards for desired behaviors are combined with training in the use of verbal self-instructions, stop, think, and then do. With this procedure, the ADHD children learn to shift their attention less frequently and to behave reflectively, a learning that is relatively stable over time. And this is not done in a single day or in a week. It requires a lot of training and a lot of effort from the side of the child, from the side of the parents, from the side of the trainer, from the side of the teachers at school. And it's like a teamwork. Okay, training these students who have this problem, ADHD. All right, so that's about today's class. I'll just take the attendance and leave. Abhiram, Abhijit Aram, Abhilash, Amal Roshan,
Present.
Bazuri, Kevin,
Present, ma'am.
Omar,
Present, ma'am.
Sanam,
Present, ma'am.
Sandra, who's present? Sanjana, yes. Nestle, Abdul, Abhinav, yes. Alina Jason absent. Alina Varghese, Devika,
Present, ma'am.
Emeline, Eva,
Yes, ma'am.
yes. Malavika, Mary, Meryl, present. Rose, Shreya. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.